Welcome to Garage Gym Athlete Cool Downs. These episodes are short, actionable podcasts pulled from previous interviews and content we've been publishing for the last several years. So go for a walk, hop on the rower, or clip into the bike for this cool down episode. And I want to pick your brain a little bit more about breathing and breathing practices. Maybe what are you doing yourself personally, just out of my own curiosity, and then how do you feel like that plays a role in movement?
Well, I think people have been talking about breathing for as long as there have been people, and look at all the interesting free diving and apnea. Pranayama is as old as it gets. I think. I was in plenty of yoga classes for a long time, but I didn't really realize how much more I could get out of my function until I started focusing on breathing mechanics, breathing efficiency, right? Being able to move large amounts of air in and out, air down, and forget just the physiology. What I'll tell you is that, I was interested in this thing for a long time because I had terrible asthma in high school, really bad. In fact, when I was on the national team, I had to register my inhaler with the International Olympic Committee. I mean, I was living on that inhaler, 15 puffs a day, 20 puffs a day, just to get through the workouts. It was brutal. And that's a lot of albuterol, by the way. No one should be taking that much albuterol. And it's one of the reasons I love coffee, because it turns out that, the caffeine is like a xanthine, which is like the theophylline. It's a bronchodilator like in albuterol. And, but needless to say, it was Brian McKenzie who now has a really wonderful course called The Art of Breath through Power, Speed, Endurance, and a lot of really good breathing strategies. And he's with a former one of our staff members, Rob Wilson, doing this. And Brian was hanging out with Laird Hamilton, and Laird had been using and adopting some of the techniques from Wim Hof early on, and then started putting them into the pool, which was an environment that forced breathing mechanics. You had to breathe correctly, otherwise you couldn't complete the task. You had to be efficient in your exhales. You had to, swimming the dumbbells across the pool builds CO2 tolerance better than anything else I've seen. And what I think is someone like Wim Hof has done an amazing job of really bringing to our attention that we could directly impart our physiologies in a way that wasn't sort of shrouded or enshrined in the yogic movement, which, for better same or worse, I think sometimes that just the baggage of that turns people off, and it's just, but Iyengar a long time ago said the nerve is the king of the breath and the breath is the king of the brain. And I think we sometimes fail as modern people, because clearly there have been people talking about this for a long time. We just didn't realize how important it was the impact we could have on the nervous system and the physiology and the output of the human being when we focused on breathing efficiency, breathing mechanics. And, it is interesting when we view the spine as not just the repository for the nervous system, and not just, and I say spine, I'm talking about head to butt, not just the primary chassis for the engines of the hip and shoulder, but also as the housing for the mechanical ventilation system, the diaphragm, the trunk musculature, the rib cage. And what we see is that there's a lot of sort of potential there, untrained, untapped potential around not having mechanical breathing be a limiter on your performance, and ways that we can directly impact nervous systems so that we can mobilize more efficiently, so we can downregulate, so we can upregulate. It's been really remarkable to take some of these very, very old lessons and sort of repurpose them and tweak them in our modern sensibilities, reapply them to areas that they haven't necessarily been applied before. And that's been transformational. So my breathing practice happens every time I'm on the bike or breathing hard. I'm aware of it. I also do a lot of practice in the pool, and I do a lot of sort of breathing drills on my own, working on CO2 tolerance, et cetera, et cetera. So again, if look at what XPT Life is doing, that's Laird and Gabby's wonderful program. Look at Art of Breath, what Brian McKenzie is doing. And I think you can begin to apply these things to your training because that's the lens through which we view it. I think people like PRI, the Postural Restoration Institute, has been talking about breathing mechanics for a long time, but sometimes their stuff gets lost because it's hard to see how that impacts my deadlifting, right? So when we can, repurpose and reprogram and explain and apply to the problems that we're trying to solve, I think we can do a lot better.
Yeah, I know personally that was a problem I ran into for many years, was being too tactical in nature of like what you just said, like, okay, great, but how is that going to help me do X? And you got to realize they all connect together.
Yeah, well, and also there's a phenomenon in complexity theory, and if it sounds like I spend a lot of time reading there, it's because I do. There's a book by Arbisman, and the book is called Complicated, and in that book, he talks about a software phenomenon called a klug or a kludge, K-L-U-G-E. And a kludge is it's a piece of software that's old and outdated, but new software gets mated on top of it, right? So you have these integrated systems where you have big modern systems, and for a gym owner out there listening, this is like mind body online. So you start, we need a gym management system. You jump into mind body, and then all of a sudden you realize that you can't schedule with mind body. So you have you plug in for that, and then selling things is difficult. So you have Shopify, and then all of a sudden, you realize that you've been running this business and your database is huge, and to pull out mind body online is going to cause you lots of pain and lots of money. And so you just keep strapping on these inelegant software systems on top of an old system to try to make the old system work. Or the old system is sort of the old mechanical heart of the new hotness. And we see this phenomenon happen all the time around, really complicated software. For example, remember the Y2K time thing? We thought all the computers were going to shut down. All that was going on, right? Because when they built the original software, they didn't think of it going up to the year 2000. And we can apply that same level of thinking to sort of the way we train people, that we don't have a cogent, robust, underpinning model about integrating movement and breathing and mechanics. What we do is we go learn something and then try to apply it to the old system. Because the old system isn't like perfect software, it's not Java, it doesn't allow us to do what we want to do. It's Fortran. And what we need to do is, kind of reconceptualize what the base model is. And I think sometimes around breathing, it's difficult for us to integrate, because now I'm like, okay, now I've just added more complexity because now I have to do yoga twice a week. And that's a completely separate breathing practice. But meanwhile, I've got 3 1-hour sessions. That's all I can work in. So what's going to drop? What's going to go? For example, when I talk about breathing, I run a basically skilled conditioning class at our gym a couple days a week. I just had 20 people in our class before I talked to you. And, some of the breathing stuff I work in early on as we're warming up with jump roping, we're breathing through our nose only. Then we'll do breath holds and jump roping. Then so there's a lot of ways for me to integrate these practices into my other practice already so that I can be doing 2 or 3 things at once instead of adding yet another thing I'm supposed to do with my life. Because what we want to do is continue to simplify people's life experience. So you have things like time to free associate and daydream and dick around and, that's what we need to do. And instead it feels like, you're just going from one should to the next.
Thanks for listening to today's Cool Down. If for some ridiculous reason you are not subscribed to Garage Gym Athlete Programming, fix that problem right now. Go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, get started with us today. Thanks for listening.